Question 1. The function h is defined by h of x equals -1/4 x minus 2. What is the graph of y equals h of x? So we know h of x. They're basically asking what is the graph of y equals -1/4 x minus 2. And we know that this is a line because we've memorized y equals mx plus b, in which b is the y-intercept and m is the slope. So looking at the equation, I know our y-intercept is -2, which means I'm going to eliminate choices B and A because the y-intercept is +2. We also know the slope is -1/4, and so that makes sense because lines with negative slopes tilt this way, lines with positive slopes tilt that way. To calculate the slope more precisely, we're going to pick 2 points that fall on integer places on the graph. So I'm going to pick this point, and I'm going to calculate slope by doing rise over run, or change in y over change in x. Change in y is obviously 4. Change in x is 1. So the slope of this line is -4. So let's do it on choice D. Easiest points to pick are probably right over here. Rise is 2, and the run is going to be all the way to 8. So this is going to be 2 over 8. So the slope is -2 over 8, or -1/4. So we know automatically that D is the answer. Question 2, x squared plus 10 equals 91. What is the positive solution to the given equation? The reason they're asking for the positive solution is because we have an x squared. So probably the easiest way to do this is straightforward algebra. Subtract 10 from both sides. We get x squared equals 81. Now we're going to take the square root of both sides. So we're going to get x equals positive and -9. And they're saying they only want the positive solution, so the answer is A. If you're totally confused by this, which you shouldn't be, you could also plug in the answers, but this is number 2, so probably not necessary. Question 3, x plus 7 equals 3 times x minus 3. What value of x satisfies the given equation? So again, this is question 3. You could plug in numbers, but not really necessary for algebra that's this easy. So let's first distribute the 3 on the right side. We're going to get x plus 7 equals 3x minus 9. And then we're going to subtract x from both sides. We're going to get 7 equals 2x minus 9. Add 9 to both sides. We get 16 equals 2x. Divide both sides by 2. We get x equals 8. And the answer is B. Question 4. A line in the xy plane has a slope of 1 and passes through the point 0, 2. Which is an equation of the line. So you could do this in a very general way, which is using point-slope method, because we know we have a point and a slope. This problem is actually easier than that because the particular point that they give us is the y-intercept. Because when x is 0, that means that's the point on the line where it crosses the y-axis. So think about what we know. We know the slope is 1, and we know the y-intercept is 2. So going by y equals mx plus b form, we automatically know the equation is going to be x plus 2, and that gives us choice C. Now let's imagine the problem did not give us the y-intercept, they gave us just a random point. So let's treat this as a random point. You would use the point-slope method, or the point-slope formula. What is that? Well, you should have memorized that the slope formula is change in y over change in x. So we'll write that as y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. To make the point-slope formula, you just multiply both sides by the bottom. So we get x2 minus x1 times the slope equals y2 minus y1. We know the slope is 1, so we substitute, and we're using the point 0, 2. And I'm going to substitute 0, 2 into my x1 and y1. So let's do that. We have x2 minus 0 equals y minus 2. And then we multiply this out. We get x equals y minus 2. Add 2 to both sides. We get y equals x plus 2, which is the same as what we got before. Question 5. From 1990 to 2001, German currency included coins called Pfennigs, worth 1 Pfennig each, and Groschen, worth 10 Pfennigs each. Which equation represents the number of Pfennig coins P and Groschen coins G that have a combined value of 85 Pfennigs? So if you're totally confused by this, just relate it to something that you know. If you're in America, this suspiciously looks a lot like pennies. So think of pennies, which is worth 1 cent. And then think of dimes, which is worth 10 cents. Now the key to understanding these equations is to keep in mind that the 85 is the number of pfennigs. So it's the number of pennies or the number of cents. So we need to find an equation where P and G shows the number of pennies and number of dimes to make 85 cents. And there's going to be different answers for P and G that'll work. So let's just choose one that's easy. Off the top of my head, I know that 5 pennies plus 8 dimes is going to make 85 cents. So let's plug these numbers 5 and 8 into each equation and see which one works. So for choice A, obviously 5 plus 8 is not going to work because 5 plus 8 is 13 and it's not equal to 85 cents. The reason it doesn't work is because by plugging in 8 for the dimes, you're assuming that the value in cents is 8, but we know 8 dimes is actually 80 cents. So A is going to be out. Choice B, we plug in the same numbers. 5 plus 10 times 8. Does that equal 85? The answer is yes. And the reason that this works is that when you have 8 dimes, the value of 8 dimes is actually 80 cents, and that's represented by multiplying it by 10 because 1 dime is equal to 10 cents. So B is going to work. Let's just check the others to see that we understand them. 10 times 5 plus 8 dimes equals 85 cents. So automatically we know that 50 plus 8 is not 85. The reason this equation doesn't work is because by having 5 pennies and multiplying it by 10, you're assuming that the pennies are worth 10 cents and that the dimes are worth 1 cent each. So that equation doesn't make sense, and the numbers also don't work out. Choice D is kind of like choice A. You're assuming that pennies and dimes are worth the same. So 5 plus 8. Add them together. And what's the effect when you multiply both by 10? It's kind of like multiplying 10 times 5 plus 10 times 8. So what that means is that in choice D, you're assuming that both pennies and dimes are worth 10 cents, which is why you're multiplying them by 10. So that one's obviously not going to work, and the answer is going to be B. So overall, I think it should have been obvious to you that you're going to be multiplying one of these letters, P or G, by 10. You might have gotten confused between B and C, but if that happens, just use something that you know, like pennies and dimes, and then test out numbers. That'll keep you from getting confused. Question 6, if x is greater than 0, which of the following is equivalent to 1 over x plus 1 over 2x? Now, if you've seen a lot of my videos, you know that I don't like fractions, and normally what I do to get rid of fractions is multiply both sides of an equation by the least common denominator. So let's imagine this said 1 over x plus 1 over 2x equals 5. Then what I would do is I'd multiply the whole equation by 2x, because then I can start eliminating the fractions. 2x divided by x is 2. 2x divided by 2 is 1 equals 5 times 2x is 10x. The reason I cannot do this here is because this is not an equation. This is an expression. So if I were to multiply this whole expression by 2x, I'd actually be changing the value because x is going to be equal to something. So instead, we actually have to do this like we do normal fractions. So if you saw 1/2 plus 1/4, you know you'd have to find the least common denominator. So what's the least common denominator of x and 2x? It's obviously going to be 2x. So the first part becomes 2x. And how do we get from x to 2x? We multiplied by 2. So if you multiply the bottom by 2, multiply the top by 2, you get 2 plus, this one stays the same because the denominator stays the same. Now we have the same denominator, and that becomes 3 over 2x. And that's going to be answer choice C. If you're totally confused by this, just pick a number for x. Let's say x equals 2, and then you actually get the same numbers that I came up with up here. What's 1/2 plus 1/4? You know that's going to be 3/4. And so when you plug in x equals 2 into each of the answer choices, the only one that's going to work is choice C, which is 3/4. And if you find two answer choices that work, you have to pick another x, say x equals 3, because what that means is that the number that you chose for x, by coincidence, works out in two of the answer choices to give you 3/4. Now they can do that just to confuse you if they guess what number that you're going to guess. Question 7, we have an equation. It says the graph in the xy plane of the equation above is a circle. What are the coordinates of the center of the circle? So you should have memorized the equation of a circle as x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals the radius squared. And this is actually just the Pythagorean theorem if you think about it. And that tells you that the center is going to be h comma k. So the problem is this does not look like that. So what do we have to do to make this equation look like the one above? We have to separate the x terms and separate the y terms and then complete the square. Because what you'll notice is there's an x squared term here, there's an x to the first power term here. Now it would be nice if we had a constant such that when we factor it, we're going to get it in the form x minus h squared. So given that this is equation, you can actually do that. The quick and dirty method for completing the square is to take the b term, divide by 2, and then square it. So -10 divided by 2 is -5. Square that, it's 25. That tells us that we're going to be adding 25 right over here. Why? Because when we factor it, it's going to be x minus 5 squared. But let's do that afterwards. And then don't forget the y's, we do the same thing. 6 divided by 2 is 3, square that is 9. That tells you that we're going to be adding 9 as well to the left side of the equation. Equals 2. Now notice what we did. We added 25 and we added 9 to the left side. We have to add that to the right side. 25 plus 9 is 34 plus 2. And that's going to give us 36. Now what happens on the left? Notice now that we have two quadratics that are factorable. This becomes x minus 5 squared plus y plus 3 squared, all equals 36. So what do we know? We know that the center of the circle is going to be 5 comma -3. And if you're confused by that, think of y plus 3 as y minus -3. So it follows the same form that we have up here. And we also know that the radius equals 6, but they're not asking for that. They want to know what the coordinates of the center are. So for this problem, you needed to know the equation of a circle, and you needed to know how to complete the square, and you can get it pretty easily. Now, if you were wondering, can I just take the answers and plug them into the equation? The answer is no, because this is an equation of a circle, which means all the points that fall on the circle. What they want to know is the center, which is technically not on the circle. So whatever the center is, it's not going to fit into the equation of the circle. So you actually have to know all the parts to this problem to be able to do it. Question 8. Y is greater than 4x and y is less than -x. When graphed in the xy plane, what point xy is a solution to the given system of inequalities? Now, if you don't like dealing with inequalities, you could just go through each of the answer choices, plug them into both equations, cross off the ones that don't work, and you're going to get choice B as the only one that satisfies both equations. What I'm going to do instead, which may be easier, is I'm going to do a quick sketch of each of these graphs because I know that they're going to start off as lines because I know y equals mx plus b is my standard form for a line. So we're going to think of this as y equals 4x, and we're going to think of this as y equals -x. And you know what these lines look like. So let's do that with the first equation. Y equals 4x. We know it's going to have a slope of 4 and the y-intercept is 0. So I'm going to draw it somewhat steep going through the origin. Now here's the key. Since y is greater than 4x, we want to go in the upward direction. So the solution set to that inequality is going to be on this side because it says greater. Now let's do the same thing with the second equation. Y equals -x. We know that this goes through the origin as well with a slope of -1. So it's going to look something like this. And since it says y is less than, we're going to go down. So the solution set is going to be in this zone. Now that automatically tells you that any point is going to be to the left of the origin, so the x-coordinate has to be negative. Automatically we're going to eliminate choice A and choice C. Now is it going to be negative 2, which is somewhere down here, or is it going to be negative 4, which is up here? Generally the safer answer is going to be choice B. And the reason that you know that choice D is not going to work is because negative 4 is actually on this line, because this line is y equals negative x, and that's exactly what's happening here. Y is equal to negative x, and so this point is on the line, but since the equation doesn't say equal to, it says less than, not y equals less than or equal to, these lines are actually not part of the solution set. So technically I should have drawn them as dotted lines, but regardless the answer is going to be B. Question 9, the equation h equals 150 plus 10t gives the total number of housing units in a community t months after a new zoning law was passed. How many housing units are added to the community each month after the zoning law was passed? So just by looking at the equation, if t is the number of months, as each month changes by 1, you're going to multiply that by 10, so you're going to get 10 new housing units every month. And so automatically the answer I know is A. If you're not convinced by that, then the best thing to do is pick some numbers for t. So let's rewrite the equation. 150 plus 10t. And let's imagine that it's 1 month afterwards. So this is going to be 150 plus 10 times 1, which is obviously going to be 160. And then another month passes. This is going to be 150 plus 10 times 2, and that's going to be 170. And then if you do it again, 150 plus another month, t is now 3. This is going to be 180. You can see that we're going from 160 to 170 to 180. We're adding 10, and the reason is because each time 1 month passes, we're multiplying that 1 month by 10. So that's just a demonstration of how this equation works, and the answer is going to be A. Question 10, which expression is equivalent to that? Now in this case, a lot of you can probably do this in your head and just use process of elimination. So for example, positive 2x squared minus 5x squared, that's going to give me negative 3x squared. So I'm automatically going to eliminate A and B, and C and D work. Take the second term, 3x plus positive x is going to be 4x, and so that takes care of choice C, and so D is going to be the answer. Now if you don't like doing that, you could write it all out, and I'm willing to bet that they wrote this because they're thinking you're going to forget to distribute the negative sign. So let's do this vertically, 2x squared plus 3x minus 2, and then this is going to become negative 5x squared, positive x, positive 7. And then when you combine this, negative 2 plus 7 is positive 5, 3x plus x is 4x, and 5x squared negative plus positive 2x squared is going to be negative 3x squared. And so that's exactly choice D. But if you can do it in your head the way that I did it, that'll save you a lot of time. Question 11, we have an equation. It says the graph in the xy plane of the equation above contains the point AB. If A is between -1 and 1, which of the following is not a possible value of B? So I want to give you some background on this type of question first. You don't actually have to know the background, but it helps if you do. When you're looking at this, this is actually a polynomial because what we have is 3 factors multiplied by each other. And when it's written like this, what they're actually doing is giving us the zeros of the polynomial. In other words, they're giving us the places where the graph crosses the x-axis, because you know if x equals +1 here, then this is going to become 0, and the whole thing, y is also going to be 0. If x equals -1, the whole equation is also going to be equal to 0, and if x equals -2, the whole equation is going to be equal to 0. So what that means is that we're looking at a graph that has 3 zeros, -1, -2, and +1. So it can either look something like this, or it could be in reverse, and it may look something like this. So this is what you probably learned in school. You can take test points and see when it's positive and when it's negative. Now, if you didn't know any of that, that's okay. The only thing you need to do on this question is take a test point for a, and since a is in the x coordinate, plug it in for x and see what you get, and then start eliminating choices. So my instinct is to do the easiest one, x equals 0. When x equals 0, let's plug it in. We get 0 minus 1, negative 1, 0 plus 1 times 1, 0 plus 2, positive 2. That equals negative 2. What does that tell you? They're asking which is not a possible value of b, which is the y value. So since we just generated negative 2, a is going to be out. That also tells us that we're probably looking at something, the graph is going to be this one. And if we moved a little bit closer to either negative 1 or positive 1, we should get a value for a, or an x value, that's going to make the y value negative 1. So that's also going to eliminate choice b. Now the question is, can we get y equals 0? And the answer is yes, because if you were paying attention before, these are actually the zeros of the equation. So let me show that to you. If x equals negative 1, and they're allowing that in the interval because it says a is greater or equal to negative 1, then negative 1 minus 1 is negative 2, negative 1 plus 1 is 0, negative 1 plus 2 is positive 1. Obviously, anything multiplied by 0 is 0. So this shows that when x equals negative 1, y equals 0. So they're asking for not a possible value, c is out. And just for demonstration's sake, let's pretend x equals positive 1. Plug that in, 1 minus 1, 0, times 1 plus 1, 2, times 1 plus 2 is 3. And this is going to give us this is going to give us 0 also. So when x is negative 1, or when x is positive 1, the y value is going to be 0, exactly what we said from our analysis before. And the only value that y cannot be, or b cannot be, is a positive 1. So the answer is D. Question 12. Two beach balls are each in the shape of a sphere. The larger beach ball has a diameter of 3x, and the smaller beach ball has a diameter of x. What is the ratio of the volume of the larger beach ball to the volume of the smaller beach ball? So this is a relatively straightforward problem. You need to have memorized that the volume of a sphere is 4/3 pi r cubed. And they do actually give this at the beginning of this section, but you'd be wasting your time if you had to flip back and check the formula. You should really know this by heart. And so this is going to turn into, the smaller sphere is going to be 4/3 pi x cubed. The larger sphere is going to be 4/3 pi 3x cubed. Now this is where they want to trick you, because most people will probably forget to cube the 3, or they might write it as 3x cubed, and then they'll forget again to cube the 3. So that's going to be wrong. When we're comparing ratios, we can pretty much ignore the 4/3 pi because those are constants. And let's just pay attention to the x cubed. What happens when we cube this? 3 cubed is 27, x cubed. So the ratio of the bigger to the smaller is 27x cubed to 1x cubed. And so therefore that becomes 27 to 1. Notice that if we wrote in 4/3 pi up here and 4/3 pi down here, it would have divided out just like the x cubed divided out. So the answer is going to be 27, and just make sure that you're cubing both the 3 and the x. Also make sure you memorized your volume of a sphere formula. Question 13, what is the graph of the equation y equals 2 times 3 to the x? So this is an exponential function, meaning to say when you have your x in the exponent, that's going to give graphs that pretty much all look like this. So how are we going to figure out which one matches that equation? We're going to use test points. The easiest test point is to find the y-intercept. Notice they all differ. And how do you find the y-intercept? Well, the y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis, and at that point, the x value is 0. So we're going to take this equation, 2 times 3 to the x, and we're going to plug in 0 for x. What do we get? 2 times 3 to the 0, which is 2 times 1 is 2. So that tells us that when x is 0, y is 2. So we can eliminate choice B, we can eliminate choice C. And both A and D have a y-intercept of 2. For exponential functions, what's the next easiest point to pick? 1. Because notice that this one is a little less steep, this one is more steep. They have different y values when x is 1. So we're going to plug in y equals 2 times 3 to the 1, and then that's going to be 2 times 3 is 6, and obviously this one is 4, so D is out, and the answer is going to be A, because when x is 1, y is 6, as we've seen right over here. Question 14, we have a graph. Notice that this is a polynomial function, just like the question that we had before. It says, the graph of the function f is shown, which of the following is a value for x for which f of x equals 0. So this is basically saying, when is the y value equal to 0? Simple. That's when the graph crosses the x-axis. So this is another way of asking what are the zeros of the graph, or what are the solutions. So that happens in 3 places. When x equals -2, when x equals 1, and when x equals, it looks like about 2 1/3. So we look at the answer choices, -2, 1, 2 1/3. The answer is going to be C, and that's all you really need to do for this problem. Question 15, the function a of t equals 12 times 2 to the t over 6 models the number of water hyacinths in a population over time, where a of t is the number of hyacinths and t is the time in days since the population was first measured. Which is the best interpretation of that thing in this context? So when you're reading a problem like this, you should automatically recognize that this is an exponential growth or exponential decay problem. The equations all follow the same form. So if I said y equals 2 times 3 to the x, the 2 is the initial population, just like 12. And in this particular case, what I'm saying is my original population of 2 is going to be multiplied by 3, or it's going to be tripled every time x increases by 1. So let's say x equals the number of months. When x equals 1, the population is going to be 2 times 3, which is 6. Now a month later, when x equals 2, it's going to be 2 times 3 squared, which is 9 times 2 is 18. And notice going from 6 to 18, the population has tripled. We can do one more. When x equals 3, we've got 3 cubed, which is 27. 2 times 27 is 54. And notice the population tripled again. So the 3 is telling us what's happening to the original population. The x is just telling us the time frame. Now in this particular problem, what makes it more complicated is instead of just an x or a t in the exponent, you've got a t over 6. So to understand what this means, what you want to do is plug in a value for t that makes the exponent a whole number. So we can rewrite it over here. A of t equals 12 times 2 to the t over 6. What's going to make this exponent 1? If we plug in 6 for t. So a of 6 equals 12 times 2 to the 6 over 6, which is 1. And so what that means is that the population is going to double every 6 days. How do I know that? Because when I plug in a of 12, which is 6 days after 6, we get 12 times 2 to the 12 over 6, and this exponent is 2, and so that means we're doubling it again. Just for demonstration, a of 18, another 6 days has passed, is going to be 12 times 2 to the 18 over 6, which is 2 cubed. So basically from this, we can tell that the population is going to double every 6 days, because every 6 days the exponent changes by a whole number 1. So let's look at the answer choices. Choice A, the number of water hyacinths doubled t times. I think A means if 2 were raised simply to the t, then that would mean that we're going to double the original every time t changes by 1, so that would mean we're doubling it t times. So that's what that means. B, the number of water hyacinths doubled every 6 days. So yes, that's what we kind of just showed over there. And it's really because 6 is in the denominator, so B is going to work. C, the number of water hyacinths increased by 2 every t over 6 days. So what makes this wrong is notice that they've changed double to increase. Because remember, in the original equation, we're multiplying the 12 by 2 a certain number of times. For choice C to work, the equation I think would have to look like this. To increase by 2, we're adding 2 to 12. And how often is that going to happen? Every t over 6 days. So that would be the function a of t if C were true, but obviously it's not. D, the number of water hyacinths increased by 2 every t days. That's easy. It's 12 plus 2t, because every time a new day happens, day 1, 2, 3, you're adding another 2, and that's very similar to choice C. So all in all, if you knew how to recognize an exponential function, you can quickly recognize this as doubling every 6 days, because that's the exponent and 6 is in the denominator, and so choice B is the answer. Question 16, 4t minus 8d equals 12h. The given equation can be written as t equals blah blah blah, where a and b are constants. What is the value of a? So there's really only two things that we have to do here. We're going to move the d over by adding 8d to both sides. So we get 4t equals 8d plus 12h. And then they want the t to have a coefficient of 1. So we're going to divide both sides by 4. So 4t divided by 4 is t. 8d divided by 4 is 2d. Plus 12h divided by 4 is 3h. And so that's your a, and that's your b. And they want to know what is the value of a, and so the answer is going to be 2. Keep in mind that when we get to the free response, the questions usually drop back down to easy in terms of difficulty level. So in case you're wondering why this is so easy, it's because we just started the free response section. Question 17, in the figure shown, BC is parallel to AD, and AB equals CD. So that tells us that this is symmetrical. What is the perimeter of the whole thing? So something that SAT really loves is triangles. If you can divide up any of your diagrams into smaller triangles, that'll probably be the way out. And here we absolutely can, because we know the height is 6. So let's draw a line here, which we know is 6. And then we want to know, this is going to be a right triangle. What's this length? Well, we can do that twice. If we know the whole base is 26 and this is 10, then 26 minus 10 is 16. That means each of these has to be 8. And you know you're on the right track, because another thing that the SAT loves is special right triangles. So this is 3, 4, 5, or 6, 8, 10. And since it's symmetrical, this is 10 also. So then really what you're doing is you're adding up 10, 20, 30 plus 26 equals 56, and that's your answer. And on the SAT, I actually misnamed that. These are known as Pythagorean triples. The only Pythagorean triples you should know for the SAT and have memorized are 3, 4, 5, 5, 12, 13, 8, 15, 17, and 7, 24, 25. If you memorize these 4, you should be able to handle any question on the SAT that incorporates Pythagorean triples. I've never seen them use any other triple or any triple with higher numbers than that. Question 18, x squared minus 2x minus 1 equals 0. The equation above has solutions x equals n plus rad k, x equals n minus rad k, n and k are positive integers. What is the value of n plus k? So on quick glance, you should automatically recognize that this is not factorable. And when you're seeing x equals n plus rad k minus rad k, you should automatically be thinking quadratic formula. So that's what we're going to have to use. Remember, quadratic formula is negative b plus minus radical b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. When we plug in the numbers, we're going to get 2, that's negative 2, plus minus radical, b squared is 4, minus 4 times a is 1, c is negative 1, all over 2 times a, which is 2. This becomes 2 plus minus. This is going to be 4 plus positive 4, so it becomes rad 8 over 2. Let's simplify this. Rad 8 becomes 4 times 2 inside the radical, all over 2. Simplify that by bringing the 4 out. The square root of 4 is 2. The other 2 is still in the radical. So we got 2 plus minus 2 rad 2 all over 2. This is nice because we can divide both terms by 2. So that becomes 1 plus minus rad 2. And this is exactly what they're talking about. 1 plus rad 2 and 1 minus rad 2. So n is 1, k is 2, and they want to know the sum of 1 plus 2. The answer is going to be 3. So basic application of quadratic formula, and that's all you really had to do for that one. Question 19, we have a system of equations. If xy is the solution to the given system of equations, what is the value of x? On most problems on the SAT with systems of equations, you probably want to use elimination. That can save you some time. If you're asking yourself, should I eliminate the y's or the x's, keep in mind they want the value of x. So let's eliminate the y to save time, because otherwise you're going to have to replug stuff back in. So I'm going to multiply the top equation by 7, and let's do that. 4x times 7 is 28x plus 7y equals 7 times 7 is 49. Rewrite the second equation, 2x minus 7y equals 1. I'm going to add both of these equations together, because if I add, then positive 7 and minus 7y is going to they're going to add up to 0. So 28x plus 2x equals 30x equals 49 plus 1 is 50. X is going to be 50 over 30 or 5 over 3, because there's not enough spaces on the free response section to do 50 over 30. So the answer is going to be 5 over 3 when reduced, and that's it. Question 20, 1/2 x plus 5 equals kx plus 7. In the given equation, k is a constant. The equation has no solution. What is the value of k? So in any question where they're asking for no solution or infinite solutions, you want to be able to eliminate the variables, and so that you're left with either a contradiction for no solution or a tautology for infinite solutions. What do I mean? Let me give you a quick example. Let's say the equation said 5x plus 4 equals 5x plus 4. You know that no matter what value you plug in for x, this is always going to be true because the left is exactly the same as the right. Mathematically, what we can do is we can subtract 5x from both sides, and then we get 4 equals 4, which is always true. So we know that this equation has an infinite number of solutions, really because it's an identity. What if, on the other hand, we had 5x plus 4 equals 5x plus 5? Well, we can do the same thing, subtract the 5x from both sides, then we get 4 equals 5, which is never true. So that's a contradiction, which means that no matter what value we plug in for x, the equation is never going to be true. So this has no solutions, and this has infinite solutions. So that's really the basic formula that you want to use for the SAT, and they already have it in this form for us. So again, what would make this have no solutions? Well, notice that 5 and 7 are different. So if we can just eliminate our x's and get 5 equal to 7, that would work. So obviously, how we're going to do that? 1/2 x plus 5 equals 1/2 x plus 7, because when you eliminate the 1/2 x, you're going to get 5 equals 7, and that's a contradiction. And so when k is 1/2, no matter what value you plug in for x, 5 is never going to be equal to 7, And so the value for k that makes this have no solutions is 1/2. This was particularly easy because they didn't give us any restrictions on the value of k, so we basically picked the most obvious one from the way that the equation was set up.